Welcome to another edition of the CAS Worldwide podcast. My name is Jamie Austin. I'm Director of Business Development. And with me today is Bill Corbett, President of Corbett Public Relations. So welcome, Bill, and let's get right at it. Are you ready?
I'm ready, Jamie. Throw it at me.
Why is PR important?
I've been in public relations for 35 years, and people do ask me that question all the time. They hear about all different kinds of marketing, but then they say, why is PR important? And I'm going to tell you really we'll talk a lot about it in the next 20 minutes, but the number one thing is it gives you a competitive advantage. When you're out there and you're getting media coverage and you're being recognized as an expert in your industry, you're standing out well above the crowd, other peers in your industry. They're not peers anymore because you're above them, and that's really what it is. It helps you in a lot of different ways, and we'll talk about that, but it's a competitive advantage. And if you're not doing it, you're falling behind the people in your industry, or they're going way fast ahead of you. So you need to think about a strategy that'll get you out and recognized in the media.
Can I do PR by myself?
Okay, so I'm not the smartest person on the planet. Oh, we just recorded that. I shouldn't say that, but I'm not the smartest person on the planet. There's a lot of people who do public relations and a lot of people who are successful at getting publicity for themselves, right? So should you do it for yourself? If you have the time, if you have the ability to set aside the time and the strategy, then yes, you can do it. The big mistake that people make is thinking they can do it, and they don't really dedicate enough time to it. And remember, time is money. So you do have to make an investment, whether it's a time investment or whether it's a financial investment. When you do a financial investment, maybe it's hiring internal people or hiring a firm to do some of the heavy lifting for you. And so yes, you can do it, but you have to learn how to do it, just like you do your books, how you would do any other form of marketing, how you manage, how you lead, and how you do public relations is really a skill set that you need to develop over time. It's not hard, but you have to be consistent at it. And you have to learn really what the media wants from you so that you can communicate with them and create relationships that allow you to get some recognition in no matter what media it is, whether it's television, newspapers, magazines, or blogs, or whatever. So yes, you can do it, but it's an investment of time, and time is money.
So, as you know, I was in the travel business for many years, and in the leisure world of travel, vacations, people say, why should I use a travel agent if I can buy it for the same price? And the answer was knowledge and experience. We would book different places, and we get lots of feedback from our clients, or we go ourselves and do it. And so we had that knowledge and expertise. I always hear the same thing in the real estate world, and that is when you're buying a house or selling a house, you may only be doing this once every 20 years, but I may have sold 20 houses in the last year. Again, knowledge and experience.
Yes, absolutely. You need to have experience. You need to do things over and over again to become an expert, in your field. They say you need to spend 10,000 hours to become an expert, in something. So yes, if you're real estate, if you're in travel, no matter what you are, and I've been in this business a long time, and like any business, it changes, every year, every few months. And so you have to be able to continually do it. So you stay up on the current processes, the trends, approaches, for doing it. The way the media wants to receive information is very different than it was years ago. We started off sending letters, then we sent faxes, then we sent emails, and now we send text messages and direct messages to members of the media to pitch them ideas. So that's evolved over the course of time. And then how they want information has evolved over the course of time. Like I said, we used to send letters. We used to send a pitch letter that would be like a page long and say, this is why you should interview a person. Now it's like a tweet. I go, I got this person, he's excellent for XYZ reason, you should interview them. So it's gotten to be very quick and fast paced, just like our lives have been. But if you don't do that every day and you haven't done it before, you wouldn't really know how to approach it. It's like trying to speak Spanish and to somebody you've never heard Spanish before, or you don't know how to speak the language. You need to learn the language in order to communicate with the people within that industry. It's really the same any industry you're in.
You keep on saying the media. PR is about getting your name in the public. It's not about me and selling. It's about being a story. Talking about what are the different kinds of public relations that you would do for a business. What kind of things would you try to set up?
Well, that's good. So the goal really is to tell stories. Like you said, you want to tell a story about an individual, how they became successful, or the products they sell, how they came up with it. You want to tell those stories so that the media would then say, hey, that's an interesting story. We want to take that and also tell it. But we also work with people to, public speaking. We help book them for speaking engagements and prepare them so they're ready to give a speaking engagement and present a program that is interesting, compelling, and that people want to come to, as well as learn something from being there. We help people with like what we're doing today. We do media training, so you're available to do podcasts, whether they're video podcasts or audio podcasts, and we work with them so that they know what they're going to say. They rehearse what they're going to say. They know what not to say, and they know what to focus on during the course of their interview. You've heard me say competitive advantage a couple of times. Well, that's part of what I thought about and rehearsed for part of this, podcast, was to say that that's really one of the keys of public relations, is that competitive advantage. So I talk about that. We also promote trade shows, and we also help people with networking. We do a little bit of social media, LinkedIn, and some other things like that. We help to build people's brand using their bios and video and all that. So it comes together in a way that is, again, a competitive advantage. It's an investment in building your brand, but it's very different than advertising and, say, direct mail and other forms of marketing. So I call it the marketing pizza. And basically, all these different areas of marketing really are like slices of a pizza. You have your networking, you have your social media, you have your direct mail, you have your PR, you have your video, you have your advertising, your online advertising, SEO. So that's just a few pieces of a pizza that can be 1,000 pieces, right? But typically, most businesses will create that marketing plan, which is the marketing pizza, and go out to market. And then they have to determine which slices that they want to spend the most money on. Some companies, they need to spend a lot of money in advertising. Other companies say, hey, I can position myself in the media and get people to call us and buy a product because they see that we're experts in our field. One quick example, I had a client that was on the Today Show, and they got 600 calls that day for a product that they sold anywhere between $4,000 and $8,000 a piece. You can do the math. It potentially could have been millions of dollars from that one experience. But other times people are in the newspaper and they get a couple of calls. You never know where it comes from. So you have to look at all these different strategies to create that marketing pizza. And one last thing about the marketing pizza, public relations is also crisis control, crisis management, right? So that little plastic thing that goes on top of the pizza so it doesn't get crushed. Well, we're that too. We're the protectors of our client's brand, so that if something bad happens, it doesn't totally destroy the pizza or doesn't totally destroy the company, because there was a plan in place that allowed for to get through that crisis situation. We've all been in the pandemic. We've all had situations that have been challenging. You have to think a little bit about what would happen if that bad thing did happen. What is your response to that? Whether it's an accident, whether it's embezzlement or fraud. I've had people, unfortunately, pass away in accidents and things like that. So, but we've talked about it ahead of time so that if it did happen, we know what to do. And so you got to think about the good, but you got to be prepared for the bad, unfortunately. And we have had our experiences there. And thankfully, in most cases, the business was able to weather that storm because they had good advice and good counsel from us, but also they did a lot of good positive things ahead of time, so that when a bad thing did happen, like a restaurant that had food poisoning one time, they had really good local publicity. People loved them. The food was really good, but they had a food poisoning situation. They were able to weather that storm, and people were back at the store, restaurant a few weeks later. So, but they wouldn't have come back if they didn't know that the owner was not a really great guy who gave back to the community a lot, and they would miss him if he was gone. So that's a little bit about the marketing pizza and being prepared.
You talk about crisis management. At CAS, we talk about internal controls and efficiencies. We talk about preventative as opposed to being reactive. We talk about planning for variables and different situations. You're saying the same thing, and that is that you really should have public relations. Well, let me even stop back for a second. Is in the case of crisis management, you want to be prepared. Not that anybody wants to or anybody any plans to have a crisis, but crises do happen. And so again, like we say, being prepared, you should have a program, a protocol in place should a crisis happen. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
Preventative as opposed to reactive.
Everybody should have a crisis. What's the saying, of failing the plan is planning to fail. You hear that from a lot of financial planners, right? But the same thing is true in any business. If you don't think about the what ifs, what if there was a pandemic? What if there was a power outage? What if there was Superstorm Sandy? What would happen to my business if that happened? What if I couldn't communicate with my office? We're all remote now. If anybody remembers March 14th, 2020, my office went from being at the office with people to being pretty much, I didn't see anybody for like 6 months in person, right? So you have to be able to, and I knew what to do if that happened. I knew I had to give people laptops and we had to kind of go to a remote, scenario pretty quickly. We were planning on actually doing that in the not too distant future on a regular basis, but that kind of accelerated a little bit. So we had a plan in place, and then we also need to know who is going to be your spokesperson if the media calls, what to do if the media calls, or if a camera shows up at your office or your house. You never know. So you have to have at least an understanding of what to do and also what not to do. In some instances, it's best not to say anything. You don't want to go around and cover your head and say no comment, and something and look like there's something wrong or you're guilty of something per se. But if you know what to do and say, look, we're going to have a statement for you shortly to respond to the questions that the reporters have, that's the appropriate way to really communicate so that a crisis doesn't go off the rails and become really, really a serious situation. And sometimes, a lot of crises aren't anybody's fault. We didn't create the pandemic. We didn't create the economic, problems that happened after because of all the government shutdowns. It wasn't our fault, but we still had to deal with it. And same thing with power outages and computer crashes and cyber attacks and all those things that can be thrust upon us. So you have to be prepared. You have to have a plan. It doesn't have to be a very extensive plan, but you should have at least a plan, and everybody in the office, depending on how big it is, the management at least should know how to execute that plan should it be needed. And certainly if the head of the company was not available, how would the management or staff handle the situation if that decision maker wasn't there? They had a heart attack or something, for example. So you need to know.
In doing a contract, working with a lawyer one day said to me, his role was to address every possible scenario and provide the solution and hope none of them happen. So I think like a buy-sell agreement between two partners is prepare for all contingencies, but again, hope that never happens. And again, you're saying the same thing, is let's be prepared in case we have these types of scenarios. We don't want to say it out loud, but if something happens to the owner or if something happens to the company, that you're prepared with reaction. Third-party endorsements. Is that what you're talking about when we do speaking engagements or you're telling a story about me in the newspaper?
Well, certainly, like in a newspaper story, you read a story in the paper about how great your products are or how innovative the CEO is or some new approach that the company is taking. And that reporter did this story and said, hey, that company must be worthy of being talked about. So that is really a third-party endorsement. When you're invited someplace to speak at a conference or a trade show or something, and you come out and you talk about a subject, it's not a sales presentation, you're talking about how to build a strong company or leadership or entrepreneurship or sales, or from a strategic point of view, those are all topics that people can learn from. And really we're out there, we're telling stories and we're helping educate people so that people see, hey, he's an expert in leadership consultant, or he's an expert in marketing, or whatever the topic is. And then that builds a a trust between the individual and the person who's speaking. And that really goes to building the brand. It goes to building the person's reputation. And again, if all these third-party endorsements thrown in, then it's elevating it even more. And then you start populating that online. People they look for reviews of companies, but they'll also say, hey, I want to work with, XYZ company. They'll do a search and they'll read a story. Oh, that company just launched a cool product, or they were profiled by Business Week. And that gives them credibility. Say, if I have a choice now between a company that I've never heard of before and one that the New York Times is talking about, well, maybe the Times vetted this company for me, and that's somebody that I should go with. And whenever we work with clients, if you're in Newsday, or if you're in an Associated Press story, or if you're on Fox Business, we get that file of that video, or we get the copy of the story, and salespeople like you go around and say, hey, we were just profiled in this Business Week, or we just profiled in Forbes. And that goes to show credibility when you're competing with other people for business. And I think, a lot of times it helps win the business, especially if it's close. If it's a close call and the pricing is very similar, and one company has a great reputation and has a lot of good coverage, I think most decision makers will go in that direction versus the unknown. That's their job. CEOs get fired if they make bad decisions. So they got to make a good decision and go with people that are vetted. And that's what I would say is again, another advantage of having a PR program when other competitors don't.
They say people buy from people they like. And if you have good PR, that puts you in a positive light, people will tend to like you.
What's the saying? No, they get to know you, they get to like you, and then they get to trust you, right? Once they trust you, they'll recommend you. So it's almost like a 4-level process.
Know, like, trust. What's the 4th level?
Recommend. And I even say love. Know, like, trust, love. Because when somebody loves your company or loves you, they're gonna help sell you to other people, right? So know, like, trust, recommend, or love, depending on who you're talking to.
I love it, but I'm going to stay with recommend. All right, let's rapid fire round. You ready?
Yep.
Is it worth spending the millions of dollars to put your name on the side of a sports arena?
No. What happens is that a company will buy the naming rights, but the media won't say this is the UBS Arena, like the one over in Belmont Park now. They just say Belmont Park, right? So they've spent all this money for the branding rights, but half the time it's not used in the description of the venue, which they're kind of paying for. So I've seen it happen a lot where it has value, but it's probably less of the value than what they may originally anticipate it to be.
So then Citibank is really smart in naming it Citi Field, one word.
Right, and that's got that they'll use that a little bit more often than the NYCBY Live Nassau Coliseum. It's way too many words, and it's difficult to say. I have nothing against those people, but it's just a mouthful. It's easier to say Nassau Coliseum.
So the answer is, if you're going to buy the naming rights of a sports arena, have a short name.
Change the name.
All right, I like that one. All right. What's the old expression? Negative publicity is better than none at all.
Any publicity is good publicity, as I say. So yeah, to some degree for awareness purposes, and this is a good kind of segue into SEO. So search engine optimization. So whenever a company name is mentioned, or anybody's name, Bill Corbett, Jamie Austin, if our name is mentioned online, it's it's a searchable item, right? So if, for example, there was a great article about you in the paper and someone typed in Jamie Austin, and then that comes up in a Google search, and that's great, fantastic. But for example, if a company maybe they went bankrupt, maybe it was 20 years ago, but that article is still floating out there somewhere, and someone does a search for that company, and that negative comes up. So you have to, the good thing is that the more positive publicity you get, it's going to drive traffic to your website. Bad publicity, though, probably will never die. It'll live on at some degree in some place online, I have somebody who I was working with who had a negative story at the New York Times about 10 years ago. They've had dozens and dozens of stories in large publications since then. But if you search their name, it still comes up like on the first page of Google because it's the New York Times. So it's not going to go anywhere. So publicity, for the most part, unless it's really, really bad, is usually a good thing. I don't, condone people getting in trouble just to get publicity, but if it is out there, and when people are going to vet somebody or research whether they should work with them or they're deciding to work with them or not, they're going to look at all those articles, especially if it's a type of business where it's a large contract. If you're going to deal with somebody for a long period of time, or it's tens of thousands or millions of dollars, they're going to want to make sure that the people they're working with are vetted, honorable, and not criminals. So they'll want to make sure that have a pretty good record, and that record is in pretty much written in digital stone on in online. It's not going to go anywhere for the most part. So you can get some attention, people can get some brand recognition, but bad publicity really is not necessarily something people should embrace.
So having them just talk about you no matter what is not good. Having them talk about you and having many more positive reviews to that occasional negative review is the salvation. That's what's going to save you. That's going to offset that one negative review.
Now I can say that there are situations where you got some negative story, right? But it may be wrong. Like someone may have accused somebody of doing something, and then they were proven to be innocent. Or there was a situation with Apple Computer one time where they had it was called antenna gate, where they had a little glitch with their antennas in their iPhone 4. But what ended up happening was they came forward, they were honest about it. Yes, there was a little problem, but the problem that was blown up in the media really wasn't that major. It was a minor problem that they fixed. So they were able to turn a negative around into a very big positive down the road. So you have to evaluate every situation. And if someone's lying about you or something's blown out of proportion, well, you might want to fight back. You don't want to just take the hit when something is incorrect. So but that's for PR people and others to work with their clients to make sure that they have the right strategy. Sometimes it's better not to say anything, but other times you got to fight back.
I was thinking just the same thing, and that is, if you do have some sort of negative publicity, don't stick your head in the sand and hope it goes away. Address it, like you said. If there's a problem with the product, if you can fix it, if you can address it and fix it, and you come back out and say we've addressed this and fixed it. Honesty is the best policy within limits under the circumstances. Cost. This must cost a lot to have someone on staff, on retention, that is just waiting for us to screw up so that you can save the day and give us positive PR.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Public relations doesn't cost anything. It's an investment in your business and your brand. If you don't have a plan or don't have a program, other people control what your brand is going to be. And you have your advertising and marketing, but your PR is part of it. But I believe public relations and media relations and all the things that fall under the umbrella are a long-term investment in a company's brand. It's like a mortgage. You pay a little bit, maybe some houses are a lot, but you pay a little bit every month or every quarter. And over the course of time, that investment helps you build brand equity. You own more of your brand in the marketplace. More people know who you are when you do this over a consistent period of time. It's not something that you can necessarily turn on and turn off. It's really public relations needs to be done in a consistent long-term approach so that the value of it can really be achieved. Doing it a little bit here, a little bit there has some value, but it doesn't get you to where you really want to be. That's why you see larger companies that they invest in this, and it does take a couple dollars. I mean, public relations firm on Long Island can charge anywhere from a few $1,000s a month to many $1,000s a month, and you start going to the large firms in the city, it's not unheard of for a public company to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, with a large agency. But this is with, public companies, so the factor is where you want to be, where you are now, and where you want to be, and how much money you feel you can budget to get to that point. And if you want to go faster, you pay more. If you want to get there a little bit later, you pay less. And that's really the way to look at it. But you want to make that a little investment every month to own your brand.
Showing my age, you reminded me of an old commercial of the Fram oil filter, where the car mechanic says, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. The idea being you can pay me $5 every time you change your oil to get an oil filter change, or when your engine breaks down, pay for the whole engine. And is that what you're really saying, is that if you replace your oil filter with PR on a monthly basis, you're really preventing the engine from blowing up? You're preventing the cataclysmic crisis where if you had to come in, just to solve a crisis management, it's going to cost more.
It's kind of like going to Jiffy Lube every month, but also going to the mechanic and doing little upgrades every month. You're going to put a supercharger on. You're going to put a new windshield wipers or something on. You're going to put new rims on. So you get a little more horsepower, over the course of time. And then what's going to happen? Everyone's going to see your car driving around the neighborhood more often because you're maybe a little bit louder than the other cars because you got a cool muffler on there, and people see you and hear you, and so you stand out. That's really what it's about. You're going to maintain it. You're going to paint it and make sure it's all maintained and protected from the elements, the protection thing. But then you're also going to jazz it up so that everybody they can't not look. You turn the radio on really loud as you drive by, and that's really what a good PR plan is, because you don't want to be, you want to attract attention. You don't want to be one in the crowd.
I was just going to say that I was attract attention. You want to be recognized. All right, this was great. I love what you're talking about. I like the idea of being proactive as opposed to reactive. I like the idea of using PR as part of your marketing and sales pie. It's another piece to that puzzle. The last thing I gotta go back to, I wrote it down earlier, is know the media. And I don't know the media. So if I had a really interesting story to tell, I don't know who to call. Are you my Ghostbuster?
You know who to call. I know who to call, but you asked before about DIY and learning, right? So, we live here on Long Island, and Long Island, the main newspaper is Newsday, right? And every single reporter has their email address on every single story that they write. So you'll know if you're in the retail space, you'll know the person who writes about retail at Newsday. If you watch Channel 12, you can get an idea of which reporters cover what and whether or not they would cover something about your restaurant in whatever, Massapequa, wherever it is, right? So you can, if you're just observant, you can learn. The key is this. We always talk about putting ourselves in somebody else's shoes, right? So how do they empathize with them and think about what their problem is? So take yourself and put those reporter hats that has press sticking out the side. So put that hat on for a second and say, hey, what kind of stories does that person write? And would they be interested in something that I gave to them? What makes it newsworthy or interesting to them, right? And if you try to sell them something like, oh, hey, I got the greatest, ham sandwich on Long Island, and that person writes, stories related to banking, well, they're never going to care anything like you have to say, because they don't care about sandwiches, right? But if you know that that company that makes the sandwiches got $1 million loan to produce more of them, well, that's interesting. Where did the loan come from? How did they grow? Because so you have to think about what those reporters want and what makes things newsworthy. And I think I can leave you on this: is PR is not a commercial, right? So the reporters aren't in the business of writing commercials. You can buy a commercial, right? But they want to tell a story about somebody or a business or a product that really, how'd you come up with it? How does it fit in with the current trends and news? And how did it overcome a challenge? And that's really the recipe. If you have that recipe and you say to somebody who writes about that type of stuff, you're going to have a good chance of getting it. Then you're going to say, okay, I don't have the time to do that. I don't have the willingness to try and follow up with that person 25 times because it may take that many times because they're all busy doing other things. Then you hire people like us who can navigate that for you, because time is money. And if we can save you the time and still achieve the result, then it was a good investment of the money and the time, and you achieved the goal that you wanted to build your brand, attract attention, and sell some more stuff.
Bill, I'm going to tell you, you need to take Sandler's sales training class, because you just had the opportunity to really lay out the absolute positive why I should have a PR firm. And I'm saying to myself, he's such a nice guy. He's such a humble individual. He's not even selling himself and his industry. He's telling us, yeah, we could do it on our own. It's, there's the answers are out there. I'm going to tell you, if I'm focusing on my business, I'm not looking at the reporters in the newspaper and asking, oh, what kind of stories do they write? I'm not even reading their bylines or looking at their email addresses. I'm not thinking like that. I'm not thinking in those means. I'm thinking about my business, and I want you. That's why I want to pay you, because I want you to be thinking all of those things that you just told me, because I don't have time for any of that.
Well, that's why I tell you. Because we know at the end of the day, I don't have a problem sharing any secret or connection or whatever, because at the end of the day, people just don't have time to do it, and they need to have other people do it, because not going to hire a carpenter. I spoke one day at a place about, they were talking about building websites, but you don't want to build an addition on your own house, right? You're going to hire somebody to do that. The same thing is, if you want to grow your business, you got to hire marketing people to work on your business. PR people and marketing people and website people, that they're the experts in it. You can help direct them, and you certainly want to be part of the team and look at the plans, but you don't want to be hammering the nails and measuring the boards and cutting the wood. You want to be there and say, oh, that looks pretty, and yeah, I now have an extension on my house, and that achieved my goal. But I say this to people, they're not going to have the time to do it, and that's why we're here to help save the time, achieve the goal, and then everybody's happy.
You're talking about construction. There's two keys, two things that you need to have. One is the knowledge of how to build, and two is the right tools to build. It's always so much easier when you have the right tools and you know how to do it. I won't tell you what my wife calls me from a carpenter and plumber standpoint, but the answer is that, how they say measure twice and cut once? Well, I usually go to fix it, break it worse, have to go buy a new tool and a new part, and then fix it the second time, because the second time around I've learned. But that again is why we should come to you. Yes and no question. You can't answer anything more than yes or no. We have a hot story. We want to get it into the paper, on TV, out to the world. We need to reach out to the media people. Whose call are they going to, it's actually not a yes or no question, it's a you or me question, sorry. It's whose call are they going to take? Yours or mine?
You're going to take mine.
That's the right answer. And that's the message that we want to tell people in the world of PR. And that is the world that you live in. That's the world that you circulate in. That's the world that you network in. And when we have a story, you're going to know who to call and what vehicles to use for it. And so I thank you for that. I know I have used you in the past for a variety of services, and I have always been pleased. And so I thank you for that. Any last parting words you want to share with us?
Um, just we're always here and available to help people, and beyond just the media relations and things we do. We work with entrepreneurs, we work with young people. We want to help anybody to achieve their goals. So we're always, me and my team are always happy to speak with people, provide some advice, and we want Long Island to be successful. We want our state to be successful. We want our country to be successful. And the only way we're going to do that is to have successful entrepreneurs and people with vision and people with the passion to grow businesses, employ people, and come up with cool ideas. And that's what we love to do, tell stories, and always we're always willing to give a helping hand and see where we can take things.
Well, thank you, Bill. I think the message to the rest of the world is PR is good, and having a good PR person is even better. So again, thank you. And thank you all for sitting and listening to us. Again, I'm Jamie Austin. It's CAS Worldwide, and you can see us at www.casww.com. Thank you very much, and have a great day.